powers impose their own cultures on the new Cameroon. And tragically, following the country's independence in the 1960s, Cameroonian strongman President Paul Biya administration scaled back U.S. military assistance to Cameroon due to this government's violent repression. As a member of the Appropriations Committee, I will be watching carefully on the level of violence in Cameroon when the day comes when we consider any foreign aid to this nation. The work of the Culver Center is a reminder that if we are going to stand up for human rights, we must be willing to be vigilant at all times, even for small countries far away like Cameroon. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
So I would like to see American diplomacy fully engaged in trying to contend with this challenge. You cited a number of other places where we have, I share your concerns about the elections in Uganda, concerns in Cameroon recently, particularly violence directed at the Anglophone population. So there are a whole series of places where we have challenges where I think the United States can help make a difference, and that starts with being engaged.
Good evening. Welcome to this evening broadcast. My name is Funton Daniel. I will be speaking live here from the great state of Texas here in the United States. That was the U.S. Secretary of State speaking on the ongoing crisis in southern Cameroon. And I want to thank my viewers in Ground Zero, those in Europe. I guess they're probably sleeping at this moment. And those in Asia, those in China, those in Russia, and those here in the United States, those in South America, those in Europe, and those in ground zero. And I guess those in ground zero are probably sleeping. And that is Comrade Funton Daniel. And I want to thank those who are able to watch this broadcast. And while this will continue, I want to also thank the Secretary of State, U.S. Secretary of State, and his engagement. But we think that there are more of this that has to be done on the crisis in southern Cameroon. And to be able to resolve the problems, you have to look at the remote cause of the problems. You don't solve problem in absentia, or you have to define. There are critical ways of addressing the problems. Let's take, for example, if a patient rushes to the emergency department, they're going to call for diplomacy to treat that particular patient. That patient is in crisis. That patient, let's take a similar example. Let's say a patient was rushed to the ER and the patient came with a chest pain. Imagine that the physician decided to call for diplomacy to treat a patient that is in the ER for chest pain. That requires immediate attention it requires immediate attention to survive that patient in the ER that require a treatment. So there should be a certain protocol within governmental policy to embrace issues similar to the patient in the ER. For example, once the patient is on an ambulance being rushed to an emergency, immediately they will call for the hospital that has that capacity and ability and available equipment and physicians to care for that particular patient. The ER is informed of the preparations once the patients arrive in that unit. So therefore, immediate protocol will be put in place. And once the patient arrives in the ER, the immediate protocol will be started right away. So therefore, it requires this system of approach should also be applicable on international community. I am not to lecture on the Secretary of State how the U.S. government should be functioned or how they should take action. Neither have I worked with the U.S. government. But however, from my own observations, we are concerned that certain way approach should be immediately implemented. The people of Southern Cameroon is not something of an isolation. And I will be coming on this full question and discussion later. So stay tuned, don't go away.
So, under the previous order, the Senate will proceed to directed at the Anglophone population. So there are a whole series of places where we have challenges where I think the United States can help make a difference, and that starts with being engaged.
You all listened to the message from the U.S. Secretary of State. I think the crisis in Southern Cameroon, it began by recognizing the statehood of Southern Cameroon. The statehood of Southern Cameroon is not something of an isolated incident. It was a fraud that was initiated by the British government on the false assumption that the people of Southern Cameroon should remain under the control of a foreign government, La République du Cameroun. In fact, the United Nations Resolution 1514 XV, the United Nations Resolution 1415 XV called for decolonizations. It did not call for partial decolonizations. Therefore, if the United States is to do the right thing, is to recognize the United Nations Resolution 1514, which called for decolonizations. Therefore, that bill just underneath me is the United Nations vote that was conducted. 62 nations voted to recognize the statehood of Southern Cameroon. Over time, La Republique arbitrarily abused its power and dismantle the structures that give the identity of the people of Southern Cameroon to what now the British government call the Southern Cameroon and Northwest and Southwest. That was a sovereign nation. That was a sovereign nation with its own government that were 3 times elected by the people of Southern Cameroon. First, Endele. Second, Jongu Foncha. And thirdly, Joa. La République du Cameroon has not, since its creation, has democratically elected a leader or a president and fully transfer of power. In fact, it was the fraud that manifested by the French authorities, because in fact Ahidjo, the former president of La République du Cameroon, was not the legitimate president. It was France, because of the ideologue of the UPC that caused France to disband the UPC because of its policy of nationalism and the dismantling of France out of Cameroon. And that became a threat to France, and they declared war and began a genocide, execution, what they call guillotine. Guillotine was first applied in Cameroon by France. For those of the French origin, let them be aware. Guillotine was a form of execution that was instituted by Louis XIV, if I'm not mistakenly, in France. Guillotine was a method of execution introduced by France by Louis XVIII, if I'm not mistaken, or Louis XIV, either or. That was a form of execution. Excuse me. That form was immediately introduced in Africa, first in La République du Cameroon, by France. Because of the disbanded UPC, some of the leaders of the UPC were being constantly executed by the French government. And that is where they got the handpick of the UPC, the handpick of Amadou Ahidjo to become the president. And that were not fully elected by the people of the French origin, La République du Cameroon. And up to the present moment, while I am still speaking, La République has not, in any circumstances, democratically elected leaders. If we are talking about a legitimate and valid government, then we should be also recognized, not just in abstention, not just because of the dictator that has to be loyal to the government. No, we have to expose and speak the truth and stand for the truth. And that is what I want the U.S. Secretary of State to recognize, this key fundamental fact. The people of Southern Cameroon, by United Nations Resolution 1514 XV, call for decolonizations. It did not call for partial decolonizations. Therefore, the people of Southern Cameroon has the right for their own territory to be recognized and fully function. That is what the minimum the people of Southern Cameroon are asking the United States government. Recognizing the statehood of Southern Cameroon is the key indicator of solving problems, not ignoring problems and impose self-egoistic policy that has no fundamental value. All of us went to school and all of us read. All of us are responsible. All of us understand the key indicator that cause havoc and conflicts among ourselves. So we shouldn't twist facts and then impose it upon the people and ignore the key because we want to please a certain individual, France, or because we're forming alliance. Let's be called a spade a spade. That is the key moving forward. That is Southern Cameroon. It has a map. It has its vote that was done. It has its own territory. But yet, it can't manage and control its people. People shouldn't have gone to war. The British government knew fully knew fully the fraud they did. The British administering authority violate United Nations Resolution 1514 because it's a superpower. Therefore, nobody has the right to question their legitimacy, their validity. No, that is not how the world is supposed to function. We twist the world and show it the opposite way rather than accept the fact and dwell on the fact. So therefore, let's face reality. If we can solve the problem, we recognize the Southern Cameroon, and United States assist the people of Southern Cameroon to formulate their government and start building a solid nation moving forward. Let's not be twisting. Let's not be speaking things. Let's stand for truth, and that is what United States government is for. If United States fought against British government for their sovereignty, in which was totally violated, British cannot be in Europe and control people in United States. Obviously, you will agree with me. Therefore, the people of La République du Cameroun, a French colony, will be controlling the people of Southern Cameroon, a British colony. That is universally cannot function in that capacity. The French has a own form of government and the system of law in which they recognize it and they dwell on it. But the people of Southern Cameroon has a totally different form of law and government. Therefore, recognizing and merging together has no capacity. It's just like taking water and blood, try to mix it together. Although they are all liquid, they cannot integrate. They can. Even though they're all water, they're all liquid, but they can't integrate because of the chemical imbalance that cannot allow it to integration. So the people of Southern Cameroon cannot integrate together. So let's do this and solve the problem once and for all, and we can move forward.
De les intégrer directement dans le système francophone qui était celui de la majorité du peuple, 80%. Mais je crois que les pays sont soucieux aujourd'hui d'affirmer leur identité et c'est pour ça que nous mettons sur pied un statut spécial qui reconnaît la spécificité de la zone anglophone, mais elle reste dans l'intégrité territoriale du Cameroun. Ça donne beaucoup de progrès.
Please, if you, we understand.
That was the president of the neighboring country, La République du Cameroun. And you listen to his own voice, what he said. Although it's in French, that is what he stated. That they had thought that they could systematically suppress and integrate into the French majority. In fact, the people of South Cameroon, which he verbalized, stated that the language, the political system, the law system, the judiciary system, those merge together. It's just like water doesn't merge with blood, even though they are two identical items. They cannot merge together, even though they are liquid. So it is important that US do the right thing. Call the attention. This is what we are doing moving forward. Recognizing the statehood of Southern Cameroon is the key indicator moving forward. That is what the good, doing good for the greater number of people. That is very, very essential that the United States recognize this and moving forward. We cannot, we cannot dealing with isolation. We cannot satisfy France at all times. It's time we stand and tell no. I know that people like to work in collaboration, but in the terms of working in collaboration, doing wrong at the wrong time, we need to step aside. United States has the ability, the capability to tell what it is. that we were not going to succumb to this. Imagine the people of Southern Cameroon are fed up. They're fed up. They're fed up when they see morally wrong principles that are being propagated. I mean, I am not to dictate on how the United States government determine what is policy, but I am simply advocating that the United States doing the right thing. Recognize the people of Southern Cameroon, their right and privilege to exist. Imagine La Republic is carrying his military, and our brothers and sisters are now in Nigeria, while a foreign nation, La Republique du Cameroun, a French colony, driven our people from their homes, that La Republique never in history contributed for the construction of their homes. In fact, in the United States, you can be proud that you can borrow. The government can provide loan for you to get a home and be paying. That is a great opportunity that is here in this amazing nation. But in Southern Cameroon, the government of La Republique do not. They are instead burning homes that they never provide assistance to the people. The people struggle in their lifetime to build a little hut that they are utilized for their own personal with their family, and the contribution of their relatives to create a small hut so that they can live. A foreign La Republique du Cameroon with its Bulus military sending troops to Southern Cameroon to destroy the fabric of citizens of Southern Cameroon that they never in history provide them any assistance. Let's look at Cas Bambili. Let's look at Cas Bambili. Cas Bambili High School was initially a United States government providing assistance to Southern Cameroon to build a university. The people of Southern Cameroon were deprived of the United States government gift to provide educational system, a university. That money was diverted by Ahijo and built Yaoundé University. How much can our people live under this repressive system? How much can our people live under this repressive system? We shouldn't have had this if our statehood were recognized and allowed to be able to move forward with its sovereignty. How much can we, our statehood, the statehood of Southern Cameroon, should have been fully embraced? United Nations Resolution 1514 specifically states decolonization. It did not call for partial decolonization. When the UK government calling, we recognize the boundary integrity of Cameroon, that was a fraud they initiated. And will they recognize their wrongdoing? I mean, in fact, we all went to school here in the United States. We all understand the veracity, the truth, speaking up the truth. But when we see the truth being twisted, and create a barbaric policy, I mean, it's very offensive. It's very offensive to visualize. It is very, very offensive to visualize people deviating from the truth and ignore it and move on the wrong. So it's time the United States do the right thing and recognize the statehood of Southern Cameroon. This is the beginning of freedom. This is the beginning of wisdom. This is the beginning. France cannot manipulate the world over time. In fact, the 13 colonies of the French in Africa, no one is living in harmony except they leave France. None of them can be proud that they are so happily for the French policy. And the people of Southern Cameroon will not live in that capacity. Fellow United States, do good for the greatest number. Let's leave this manipulative. Let's stand for the truth and let's do the right thing for the common good of mankind. We know the former president, He began and they abandoned. Now it is your turn. Do the right thing. Do the good thing. Recognize the people of Southern Cameroon. It's the key indicator. La République would not. In fact, when they were using then gun in 2016, they have the same gun that La République was utilized in 2016, slaughtering our citizens. So now they are now migrated to explosive. So as time goes on, things become more worse. So therefore, recognizing the statehood, because in fact, La République will never in history govern the people of Southern Cameroon. That is a true fact, except the United States and British government bomb Southern Cameroon into submission and turn it into dust. That's the key the United States can do. Otherwise, recognize the people to move on with their identity. That is the key. You can listen from La République president, how he has over time manipulated, changed everything. Hold on.
Those from Bosnia, Cambodia, and many other places all
series of
receive the
places
treatment
where
at Kovler Center
we have
to recover
challenges
from their
where
trauma.
I think the United
During my
States can
visit,
help
I had the
make a difference,
privilege
and
of
that
meeting
starts with being
refugees who had
engaged.
fled the mounting violence in Cameroon. Cameroon, a West African nation, is dealing with complicated colonial legacy. Following World War I, the League of Nations appointed France and Great Britain as joint trustees of what was previously a German colony. Not surprisingly, the two colonial powers imposed their own cultures on the new Cameroon. And tragically, following the country's independence in the 1960s, Cameroonian strongman, President Paul Biya, one of the world's longest-serving leaders, now almost 40 years in office, further favored the French-speaking over the Anglophones. The results were not surprising. Mounting resentment and calls for greater autonomy within the Anglophone population, with ensuing violent suppression from the Biya regime. The refugees I met with told harrowing stories of this crackdown and violence. I was pleased to join Senator Van Hollen late last year in a letter urging Secretary Pompeo to focus U.S. attention on the unrest in Cameroon. Equally pleased when the administration scaled back U.S. military assistance to Cameroon due to this government's violent repression. As a member of the Appropriations Committee, I will be watching carefully on the level of violence in Cameroon when the day comes when we consider any foreign aid to this nation. The work of the Kovler Center is a reminder that if we are going to stand up for human rights, we must be willing to be vigilant at all times, even for small countries far away like Cameroon. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
7,000 refugees from Cameroon registered with the UNHCR. Thousands more have been forced to flee their homes, and dozens of villages have been ethnically cleansed. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs and High Commissioner for Refugees, 437,000 from the Anglophone regions have been displaced, whilst the charity Protection Approaches says that 3.3 million are in need of humanitarian assistance. Amnesty reports that 450 to 500 civilians and 185 members of the security services have been killed. UNICEF estimates that 58 schools have been destroyed, 47 political leaders are being held without charge, and a recent Amnesty report refers to, and I quote, arbitrary arrests, torture, unlawful killings and the destruction of property. The Catholic Bishops' Conference has called it, quote, inhuman, blind, monstrous violence. And of the October election, Archbishop Samuel Cleda, the president of the Bishops' Conference, says, one has the impression election results are decided before voting takes place. My lords, we can all share in these horrendous statistics, but what I want to do is this evening focus on what conclusions we can draw from the United Kingdom's dismal approach to this situation. More than ever, with Britain's potential departure from the European Union, we must seek to define our role in the world. And it would be helpful to know from the Noble Baroness the Minister whether, for instance, human rights issues were assessed before, for instance, the New Age natural gas deal was announced, what consideration has been given to targeted sanctions and whether this crisis figures in the Foreign Secretary's recent commitment on atrocity prevention. My Lords, the government mustn't suggest that this is a level playing field conflict in a civil war between equal sides. Too often in the past, in Bosnia, in Rwanda, in Darfur, the United Kingdom chose the path of moral equivalence, hinting that both sides were as bad as each other is the easy way out. In a previous generation, this was known as appeasement. Moral equivalence signals that we cannot be expected to pass judgment on which side is more to blame for the conflict. Instead, we issue the usual calls for a cessation of violence and a negotiated settlement, or we frame political conflicts as if they were natural disasters requiring aid, and we're very generous at sending aid rather than political solutions. At its worst, in Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur, we have portrayed the persecution of unarmed civilians by repressive governments as a result of ancient ethnic hatreds, thereby dehumanizing the victims and denying the legitimacy of the protesters who yearn for the rights that we take for granted. By citing ancient ethnic hatreds, we absolve ourselves of the obligation under international law to stop the killing. It's also disingenuous to defend our tepid response by claiming that the circumstances present us with a simple binary choice between wringing our hands in dismay or putting British boots on the ground. This is to ignore the potential for soft power available to the international community, be it concerted and sustained diplomatic pressure, carefully targeted sanctions, or international justice. The grievances fueling the violence in Cameroon did not erupt overnight. We had plenty of warning, but we chose not to listen to Cameroon's Anglophone minority. Anglophones represent 20% of the population, but for years there was only one Anglophone member of the 36-person cabinet in Yaoundé, just one example of their systematic marginalisation. My Lords, we shouldn't underestimate the influence we have, but it speaks volumes that we left it to the American ambassador to express his disapproval of the Cameroonian government's brutal response to peaceful protests. For decades, the Francophone government has ignored the pleas of moderate representatives of civil society, such as church leaders. Calls for a federal solution were ignored by President Biya 36 years in power, fueling the calls for secession and thereby polarising opinion. Breaking point came when the Francophone government sought to impose French laws in the French language in Anglophone courts and sent Francophone teachers speaking French into English schools. They responded to peaceful protest with disproportionate force. The International Crisis Group reports that a government helicopter, for instance, hovered outside a church, shooting Anglophone worshippers as they emerged from Mass. Inevitably, disproportionate actions led to the current escalation. In the face of all this, my Lords, there is nothing admirable about being even-handed in the face of the suffering of the Anglophone community. The United Kingdom should support the Anglophone community's peaceful civil society leaders in seeking genuine and inclusive talks. We need a targeted strategy for atrocity prevention and, my Lords, a commitment to bring to justice those responsible for human rights violations wherever they occur.
My Lords, I too would like to thank my noble friend Lord Boateng for initiating this debate and too for his passionate introduction. I don't want to repeat his excellent background to the complex and contested decolonisation process that he referred to. But as my noble friend Lord McConnell highlighted, particularly since the federal arrangements were scrapped in '72, the English-speaking Cameroonians have complained bitterly that they are politically, economically and linguistically marginalised. And of course the current period of escalating violence and displacement goes back to when lawyers protested.
Thank you for that message. I'm sure everyone was listening carefully for his summary. That was the UK member of Parliament speaking on the question of Southern Cameroon. That is an indication that the people of Southern Cameroon shouldn't have been given to a nation that has no moral value of a just government. A just government is a government that the people recognize that they represent their interests. La République du Cameroon has never, La République du Cameroon, in fact, has never, since its since 1960, that France, following the United Nations resolution to be decolonized all those territories that were under the Allied forces, France, in fact, has remained a glue onto its colony, not just Cameroon. In fact, the rest of the French colony are in deep mess because of the French foreign policy and continue glue and rather allow the people to operate their own government freely and willfully. And they should assist them as economic partner rather than control every aspect of their life, how they use their restroom, how they walk. France is glued onto them and cannot allow them. The people of Southern Cameroon believe in a freedom when the people have the right to question the validity of their own government at all times. And that makes a smart government and responsible government that for the goodness of its citizens. The people of Southern Cameroon cannot in any capacity function under that blue aspect of life of La République du Cameroon. Therefore, the United States need to do good for the greatest number of people. It is by recognizing the sovereignty of the people of Southern Cameroon. We cannot be dealing in isolation as though nothing is happening. I can give a typical example like in American field. If someone report that he has a chest pain, the first thing here in the United States is to call 911. The response team accepting or the emergency department response to that 911 or medical response team, they immediately arrive there and look for the facilities that has the ability to be able to handle that particular patient. And that patient will be immediately notified the facility as a receiving facility. This is the purpose to save individual life here in the United States and everywhere in advanced nations. But in Africa, they're still dealing in the 1960s when they haven't shown any revise. Imagine citizens, let's take for example, Ivory Coast Prime Minister, two Prime Ministers die in France. Who are the people treating them in France? They are simply African Ivory Coast citizens that are medical professions there. Why should France glue on to its colony? We, the people of Southern Cameroon, cannot live in this environment. We have to live in a different environment. Therefore, doing good for the greatest number is to recognize the sovereign state of Southern Cameroon is the key moving forward. And I'm sure United States need to stand and start discussing this. United States can call for immediate action right now as I'm speaking here in this message. Let's not beat in the forest. Let's do good for the greatest number. Let's not be beating the forest. I think the United States has the capacity to do it and do it alone. And so therefore, this is Funton Daniel speaking here this evening. I'm going to continue on this topic of argument. Thank you for watching. This is Comrade Funton Daniel here in the great state of Texas, here in this amazing nation, the United States. Good night.
previous order, the